saw that water cup. Yeah, but you can actually take any spot you want. Because everybody else is logged in to the Zoom. We're about a minute away from getting this thing rolling. Michael's going to join us by Zoom. Actually, it looks like we are. Straight up, thank you, Brianna. Call meeting of the study session to order, and city clerk is on and will take the roll by your presence. The study session of the city council and not a business meeting, so we don't need a quorum, but we have one anyway. So we'll just jump right into our agenda. And just for the record, we will have the clerk call out council members for a roll call, and just make sure that gets recorded.
Councilmember James Blair.
Here.
Councilmember Molly Carmody.
Here.
Councilmember EJ Curry.
Here.
Councilmember Holly Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Tracy Wood.
Here.
Councilmember Joe DePinto.
Here.
Councilmember Terry Kaminsky.
Here.
Mayor JW Foster.
Here, good job not forgetting Terry.
Thank you.
Yeah. So very good. Our very first agenda item is going to be an update on the Yelm Loop, the perennial Yelm Loop project. And Michael, I don't know if Michael's not on yet, but just by way of introduction, Bill's been working on this project for quite some time, and most of you know that this is a project that DOT's been interested in for many years. In fact, my first public meeting that I attended in Yelm in 1996 was on the 3 alternate selections for bypass. And this is the one that was decided upon, and it's taken us this long to get to where we are. But we're very excited to see that the project is nearing its expected completion, and then the story will continue from there. But Bill, why don't you just jump in and tell us what you'd like to tell us? Did you need to share a screen or anything?
You bet. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, so I'm Bill Elliott. I am the design project engineer for Ouachita Olympic Region on the SR 510 Yelm Loop Phase 2 project. It's been a while since I met with council. May have been 2018. I'm not sure if I met with you in 2019 or not. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and provide an update. I do have some graphics that I can use to help explain where we're at and where we're going to get this project delivered. So I'm going to go ahead and try and share a screen and go from there. Informal, so I welcome questions at any point as I'm going through it, and we can go from there. So let me give it a shot here. Okay, let me know when you see a graphic come up. Oh, there we go.
You have permission to share, so here it comes.
There we go. I have to press the share button. Okay, let me turn this on. Okay, so again, SR 510 Yelm Loop Phase 2. Y'all are familiar with Phase 1 because you probably drive on it with some frequency. That was completed in 2010. Want to start off by addressing some current meaning recent and upcoming schedule activities. I think that's probably your primary interest. So we'll start with 2021, and we can talk about issues before that to the extent that you would like. We have been working on and are in the process of completing a supplemental environmental assessment for the NEPA process. We are also completing the purchasing of right-of-way that's necessary for the corridor. That's predominantly down in the 507 area in the Walmart vicinity. Of course, the 21-23 budget, which passed the legislature in spring of this year, did fortunately fund completion of this project, so that's a good thing. Based on that, we are moving forward with the final design and the contract plan preparation. Permitting we expect to do in second half of 2022, and then move forward to advertise for bids in January of 23, then the bid contract period, of course, and then construction to start in mid 2023 to be complete in mid to late 2025. So those are the big pieces of our current and upcoming activities. And again, we can drill into any one of those areas to the extent that you have interest. So a little background. Purpose and need is always fundamentally important for a project. Some of you may have participated in the recent June online open house that we conducted for the supplemental environmental assessment. I'm going to use some material from that, but just to reiterate, if you will, the fundamentals of the project. Why is the project needed? I'm speaking to the choir here. You live, work, and represent the population out there in Yelm. Transportation demand, a couple of photos and traffic map that you recognize all too well there. Local traffic using Yelm Avenue to access businesses and residential areas. Regional traffic also using the same corridor to travel through Yelm to destinations and job centers in Thurston and Pierce County. A lot of competition between those two groups of users. Community goals, which include the need to disperse traffic throughout the community rather than concentrating in the urban core, and the policies that identify the need for enhanced regional transportation corridors. And then system efficiency, allowing regional traffic destined for locations outside the city to travel efficiently and avoiding the city's commercial core. Purpose of the project, again, to meet that transportation demand, community goals, system efficiency. A lot of sub bullets there, which we can go through, but fundamentally, the primary purpose of the proposed action, the build alternative, is to address existing traffic congestion on Yelm Avenue in the city of Yelm and expected traffic over the course of the next 20 years. So phase one in the upper left of this graphic, as you know, has been open to traffic since 2010. And phase two will pick up at the end of that at Cullens Road and build the rest of the corridor for about 3 miles to connect into SR 507 next to Walmart. This will be a limited access corridor. Phase one is limited access. This was established in 2006 when WashDOT went through a public process to establish the limited access corridor through a public process, public hearing, and we purchased access rights at that time. Limited access corridors reduce the number of intersections. The intersection spacing shown by the yellow dots on this graphic are typically about 1/2 mile, a little bit of variance along the corridor, as you can see. And we do not allow driveway connections within limited access. The final eastern end there from 103rd to 507 alongside Walmart is managed access, not limited access. Within managed access, driveways are allowed. There are criteria that are applied to that, and that's all, of course, commercially zoned in that area. This graphic shows a typical representation of the corridor. Again, you're all familiar with the phase one portion. It's largely identical to that. The only difference between them is the phase one portion has a non-motorized bicycle pedestrian path on both sides. On phase two, we're just going to do that on one side, but it's 1 lane each direction, and it'll be signed at 40 miles an hour. The corridor will have a number of intersections, basically 6 from one end to the other, starting at Cullens, Roten, Wilkinson, Flume, 103rd, and at SR 507. So 6 intersections. Of course, there's already an intersection at Cullens and 103rd and 507, but we are going to reconstruct those. And then there will be existing cross streets or existing public roads that we will cul-de-sac, again, because of those limited access criteria, 4 of them at Crystal Spring, at Canal, at Railway, and then the other crossing of Canal. Those locations will all be cul-de-saced, and those roads will not have access to the Yelm Loop. A little bit more detail. These blow-ups show the proposed intersections that we'll build as part of the project, and I'll show them in a little bit more detail in a couple minutes. Again, Roten Road, Wilkinson, Flume, 103rd, and 507. I'm going to zoom in on each of those now just to show you a graphic. So up at Cullen, which of course is a T intersection currently because that's where the phase one project ended, we'll pick up on the east side of that, building the corridor going to the east or right on this graphic. and complete that intersection. Stop control for Cullen as it is today. Next graphic is not an intersection, but it shows our crossing of Yelm Creek. There'll be a bridge over Yelm Creek as shown. Crystal Spring is our first cul-de-sac location, where Crystal Spring will be cul-de-saced on either side of the Yelm Loop. On to Roten. Roten will be a stop controlled intersection as shown in the graphic. Then on to the first crossing of Canal, another cul-de-sac location. Wilkinson will be a roundabout as shown. Then I want to highlight the crossing of the Prairie Line Trail. We intend to grade separate over the Prairie Line Trail so bicycles and pedestrians could pass underneath the new Yelm Loop roadway. This is a bit better graphic of that, showing the grade separation where the roadway will pass over the top of the shared use path. Okay, then we'll move on to Railway Road, which will also be cul-de-saced as shown. Flume next to Longmire Park, that'll be a stop control intersection with turn lanes. Cul-de-sac at the next crossing of Canal. Roundabout proposed at 103rd and a roundabout at SR 507. So those are the intersections proposed along the limited access corridor. This graphic shows the area vicinity of Walmart with 103rd up on the upper left, and then the new Yelm Loop corridor coming down to the roundabout at 507. As a result of a value engineering study we did in 2019, we are proposing to have a raised median in this area. That's the orange shading in the middle of the road, such that all accesses in this area will be right in, right out. That eliminates left turns, which are problematic in many high traffic areas from a safety perspective. It also really improves mobility. And that's viable here because of the roundabouts. With the roundabouts present, the right in, right out access to these properties is very viable, and the roundabouts can be used by folks to basically reverse course as necessary to go back the other direction. And we worked with both the city on this proposal and Walmart, the Walmart general manager, as it was developed. I'm going to give you a bit of the history of community engagement and the environmental studies that we've done. And
I've got a question on that last one.
You bet.
So if you're coming from 103rd, that means you have to go to the roundabout, turn around, and then turn in.
That's correct. If you're coming from 103rd or coming around the whole loop, if you will, and you want to go to Walmart, you would come down passing essentially Walmart, go around the roundabout, and exactly as you described, come back and make a right turn into Walmart. Correct.
I don't know about everyone else, but I think that's a terrible idea, and you're shoving extra traffic onto that roundabout that doesn't need to be there. There's really not that many people coming through there that people waiting to make a left turn that it's going to be impactful. If anything, it's just going to put more people down on that roundabout than needs to be.
Yeah, appreciate that perspective. I think that's some valid observations. We did run traffic models on this with the demands going to the adjacent properties, and those models consistently indicated good operation of both roundabouts with the turn movements that would be needed to get to the origin and destination. So we believe the roundabouts in this configuration with the raised medians will function well. There'll be a bit of a learning curve for folks to learn what the access is when it opens. It's going to be different. We think folks will learn that fairly quickly, and signing, of course, will be important.
The computers may say it's going to work great, but as more and more people are coming through there, by having anyone that lives up near 103rd, if they just want to go to Walmart, by forcing them to go down and go through that roundabout, like it's just forcing more cars through that roundabout than needs to be in there. And in time, it's going to make that roundabout, I try to the correct term, an S show. There really should be a way for people to turn left into the Walmart from there. I get the other side coming from Roy. We don't want people going through that that roundabout and then trying to turn left into the Walmart there. But off of the Walmart Boulevard or what will be SR 510, there really is no reason that people shouldn't be able to turn left in there. Or, yeah.
Yeah, I think if after this goes operational, it is proven to be problematic. The raised median applications are not irreversible. So there is,
Then we're just wasting money.
well, our assessment, along with other involved stakeholders, has concluded that we think this is the best solution for the location from both a mobility and a safety perspective. I appreciate not all share that perspective, but we think this is the optimal scenario.
Okay. How much say do we as a city have in that?
Quite a bit of say. The proposal for the raised medians originated from the city, and during the value engineering study I discussed was strongly supported by the city from primarily a safety perspective.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like to have some conversations about this moving forward, but I don't want to hold up the meeting any longer.
Yeah, we're welcome to continue the conversation, James. I'll echo Bill's sentiment though, and former Community Development Director Grant Beck's work on this. People with engineering degrees have spent decades working on this project. And Bill, I'll also ask you to say why building another bridge across the Nisqually River is not the solution either, because that's a common comment that we get. But I've seen these traffic models myself, and although I agree with the annoyance factor, I've seen how these work over in Tumwater on Little Rock Road. It actually flows the traffic very well. But if we have anybody who wants to bring forward a different engineering solution to this, we could certainly present that to the DOT for their consideration. And so, Bill, while I have your attention, could you actually stop for a moment just to explain why the 510 route was designed this way and not over the river into McKenna, and why building a bridge over the river is not going to be an answer to the congestion problem?
Can we stay on this this roundabout median thing for a second before we move on to the bridge?
We can. I'm just trying to answer a question that was asked.
I understand
online by
that.
one of our attendees.
I understand that.
Do you have
But
a
we might as
question,
well-
Molly?
Yes, I did. So I am with James on this. If you're coming down 510 or Walmart Avenue and you want to turn left into the Walmart, going all the way around the roundabout and then into Walmart is going to be really difficult for a lot of people. I don't see why we can't put in a left-hand turning bay there, and then a left-hand turn allowed from 510. I mean, that shouldn't be that much of a difficulty, and it would eliminate the probability of having to get rid of the raised median once people realize that it's just not practical. So is that an option to put in a left-hand turning bay there?
It's certainly physically possible. The width of the roadway as currently proposed is no different than the width of the roadway with a left turn lane in the middle. So the footprint of the project doesn't change whatsoever. So that is feasible. Again, based on the work done to date, we believe this will function better than that, including access to and from Walmart. But we're open to the city's perspective. This is obviously within the city limits in a managed access area. So if the city were to take the position that they would prefer the configuration be revised here, we'd certainly be open to that input.
Ollie has a question.
Is
Oh,
it, is it
that
just,
was my hand. That's what I had.
is it just one lane each way right now?
Correct.
Okay, so I happen to come, like what James is saying, I get, because that's actually how I go to Walmart. On the other hand, if it's one lane each way, and this is the way for people to get around, I also can understand if people were trying to make a left-hand turn, unless you could build that other lane, it's going to stop traffic, right? I mean, that's the concern. Because if I'm stopped to make a left-hand turn, if you open up that median, unless they could put another lane, I get what you're saying. I don't think I would like it to have to drive all the way around the belt, but I think I'm understanding if it's only one lane each way, how could they do that?
Well, if you can see this graphic on the left of the screen, this shows the typical roadway proposed through that area. So it would be one through lane each direction. This is the median area that the current design proposes to be a raised median, precluding left turns. If the raised median was not implemented, that width could be used for a center turn lane.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Go ahead, Joe. You're still muted.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought I unmuted myself. My bad. Thank you both for coming out. I totally understand the concerns. I see the benefit of this. I think the council probably would want some more discussion on this, though. I would imagine this was a decision made by our planning department director and perhaps the mayor. I think the council sounds like they want some input and some say in this. Bill, do you know when's the dead drop moment that we need to have a finite answer for you?
Well, let me scroll back to schedule. Actually, let me scroll ahead to schedule. Let me go through a couple slides. There we go. This is the go forward schedule. So let's just talk from this. So as I said earlier, we are now proceeding with the final design and contract plan preparation. On this topic, as I described, this doesn't change the footprint of the project. If it changed the footprint, that would be really problematic. Since it's all within the same footprint, I'd say if there was to be further discussion, attaining clarity of intent within the next 6 months would be sufficient. If this extended beyond the very beginning of 2022, I think it would be problematic for us in a delivery sense, but I think we have the balance of 2021 to work through this.
All right. And Bill, would you be willing to come back to another study session in a few months, perhaps, to
Sure.
kind of answer some questions with us?
Yeah, you bet. Yep. And we can, we can provide, I didn't bring it with me tonight, but we can provide more kind of technical backup in terms of the traffic analysis for that configuration and what it showed with regard to the concerns voiced. Definitely.
That'd be great. And if council would oblige, I think we should move on here. But I mean, talk about this in another study session and make a final decision here together would be my suggestion.
I agree. Ideally, at the next study session, if we could just talk about this and kind of a little more.
Staff will take that on as far as trying to schedule this. And we'll ask Bill to be able to bring back those traffic models to demonstrate why this was the preferred design from that work. And if the council wants to bring in a different concept to that, we could have it at that meeting, but I'm not sure what our schedules will look like. We can try to get it done in October. We'll see if we can get it done that soon. Bill, with that, looking at your calendar just off the top of your head, is the first Tuesday in October available to you?
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
We'll follow up with this after the later this week then.
Great. So to go to your other question, relevant, and this isn't an ideal graphic because the graphic, it clips it off before the 507 crossing of the Nisqually. But Mayor, you brought up the question about why does the project not propose a second bridge over the Nisqually River, or on the same note, we do get questions about why doesn't the project connect directly into the 507 at 702 intersection in McKenna, and it brings up concerns about traffic congestion and problems along 507 in the 702 intersection area, which are certainly real. It fundamentally, this goes back to the established purpose and need for the Yelm Loop project as described at the introduction, which is the purpose, the need of the project is to reduce congestion on Yelm Avenue through downtown Yelm. And while there is a very real operational challenge along 507 in the McKenna area, that is a neighboring but distinct issue. If this project were to try and take on the 507-702 challenge, it would be a distinctly different project. We would be back to square one in terms of development and certainly the environmental process. There's also, and Mayor, you mentioned the bridge over the Nisqually, and I've heard a number of people ask about ask about that crossing or strongly advocate for the need for a second bridge over the Nisqually. Our understanding, one, that's not a very old bridge. And I don't have the exact date of construction, but it's not very old. My understanding, it is in very sound structural condition. So it's not a structural risk item. And from a traffic or a mobility perspective, our understanding is that bridge is not a constraint. That bridge is as wide or wider than the roadway is on either side of it. Are there traffic problems in the vicinity of that bridge? Yes. Some of those are access to and from neighboring businesses along the corridor that get a lot of business. That's a good thing for them. It does cause access challenges. There are intersections in that vicinity, particularly at Vale Road, that are problematic. Those are issues that are being considered. There's a roundabout in development for the intersection of 507 at Vale Road. That's also distinct and separate from the bridge. And again, acknowledging the challenges of traffic operations on 507 in McKenna at 702. That's also quite distinct from the bridge over the river. So those are basic reasons why this project isn't addressing that. It is another bridge over the Nisqually, does not in any manner address the established purpose and need for this project. This project does not preclude future actions to address issues at points along 507 to the east toward McKenna and Roy, and including if at some point there was a desire or a decision made to make a connection from the proposed phase 2 of Yelm Loop toward Roy. This project does not preclude that, but it doesn't attempt to take it on because it's not what the selected purpose and need for the project was.
Thanks, Bill. We have a question from Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, and I hate to backtrack. I just got one quick question about the roundabout at 507 and 510 there by Walmart.
Yep.
As we were discussing the median there, as people are coming out of coming down Walmart Boulevard, heading towards the roundabout, and the concerns were about taking a left-hand turn there and entering that, and being, the problem of entering that roundabout. What I'm curious about, Mr. Elliott, is how much of an impact on the traffic coming off of 507 does the completion of this have? Is it a significant reduction in traffic coming eastbound on 507?
I'm trying to follow your question. Does the project analysis or proposal reduce traffic on eastbound 507? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I mean, obviously it's going to have a reduction in traffic coming out of Yelm once with the bypass is complete, and folks who are coming through Yelm presently, just using it as a thoroughfare, a pass through, are going to get in the habit of using the bypass, right, which in turn is going to create a whole lot more traffic coming down 510 to 507 rather than everybody coming straight through town on 507 as it presently is. My question is, in your traffic modeling, was it a drastic decrease in traffic that was coming through 507?
Okay, so coming from downtown to this intersection.
Correct.
No, it's not a drastic decrease in volumes. It does decrease the volume. It does reduce the congestion in downtown, but it's not a drastic decrease. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. We can pull that up, or I can get those back to you.
That's fine. I don't need them. I was just curious if it was a drastic one, and being that it's not, I have to concur with my council members that it'd be a good idea to have a turn lane there. One more question, and I'll be quiet until I can think of something else to ask. I'm wondering about the 40 mile an hour speed limit that you said will be on this bypass. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is this bypass built with the capacity to have a higher speed limit than that?
Not with the intersections that are proposed, no. If there were fewer intersections, that could be viable.
You're talking about the stop intersections or the roundabout intersections?
Well, both really.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously in roundabout intersections presently, we have signage that would indicate people need to slow down. There's a roundabout they're approaching. But my concern is that 40 miles an hour, what we're going to have is an ideal setup for the state patrol to sit there and get people for doing 5 over, because 40 miles an hour creeping through there is just barely moving. And unless they've changed their formula on their method in which they decide when to raise the speed limit, a certain percentage of the drivers have to be speeding before we go into even discussion of whether or not that speed limit should be raised. That's just another concern I wanted to bring forward.
No, I appreciate that. I can verify. I don't know exactly what the actual design speed is of the proposed roadway. It's always somewhat above the posted speed. I can verify what that is. I'm sure that the design speed is probably at least 50. We typically allow a buffer of about that much. And I can convey back your concerns about that and see from perspective of our traffic office, what their, I guess I'll use the word commitment is to the 40 mile an hour posted speed.
I appreciate that. If memory serves, on that first section that we've completed, the build rate was 55 miles an hour. So that's why, like I said, that's why I questioned the 40 mile an hour. And initially, I'm not sure if you recall, but we started out at 35 on that, and that was just painfully slow. So just trying to get ahead of the horse here.
Nope, good question. I'll convey that back and get back to you on that.
Bill, I have a question for you regarding truck traffic. The hope has been that westbound traffic coming into Yelm from the east would use the bypass. So because you take one truck off of Yelm Avenue, and it's like taking 5 cars off of Yelm Avenue, especially at the intersections.
Right.
So the question is, do the roundabouts that are built here at Walmart Boulevard and again at Grove 103rd rather, have the capacity for those larger vehicles, those larger wheelbases? Because we've seen some issues with the roundabout design at Mud Run Road at the beginning of 510. I hope that they've figured out the design to make those wide enough to handle that larger capacity vehicle.
Yeah, these are absolutely designed for that. Our design vehicle is what we call a WB67, which is a full-size semi-load. As you know, in this area, well, Washington State in general, there's been quite an evolution in terms of the implementation of roundabouts over the last, 20 to 25 years, right? Late 90s, there were just a couple, and then they've gradually proliferated from there. Over that period of time, I think the business, if you will, has learned a lot about how to make roundabouts optimally effective from both a mobility and safety perspective. The one at Mud Run was not in the early days. That was built in roughly 2010, but it's still a solid decade ago. So we're making use of the best current engineering practices to design these. And again, they are built with that semi-truck being the design vehicle. So you can see at each one of these, the green center island area, that's not traversable, but the orange around that, the donut, if you will, it's called a truck apron. Those are designed for semi-loads to ride up on as necessary, making a turn movement.
Excellent. Is there more to your presentation? Could we move
Um,
on?
I had just one or two. Let's see what I had here. Oh, I just wanted to briefly touch on the evolution of the community engagement in environmental studies. You mentioned in the introduction, Mayor, your early involvement in the 1990s. Of course, this project did start. The city of Yelm initiated this project in the 1990s, including conducting the original environmental assessment, which resulted in the finding of no significant impact in 2000. And the state involvement started in about 2003. As I mentioned earlier, we did conduct a public limited access hearing in 2006 that established the limited access corridor. In 2007, there was a NEPA reevaluation. As you all probably know, NEPA environmental documents have a shelf life to them based on other actions that are occurring after them. And then there was a large break in time. Of course, phase one was built in the 2009-2010 timeframe. We got going in 2018, conducted a public open house in, I think it was late September of 2018, and then proceeded with the supplemental environmental assessment that we're in the process of completing. Did an online open house in fall of 2019, another online open house with the public comment period for the supplemental EA in June of this year. And then we'll be moving forward with permitting in 2022. That I just wanted to give you kind of that history of the community engagement. So that's the EA. We've talked about that, the online open house, the discipline studies that were evaluated and documented. Hopefully some of you had a chance to see that online open house in June. And then we went through the schedule. So that's basically what I have. I'll be glad to have any further questions.
Any other questions from council? I can see your hand if you put it up on this on the panelist list, or I'm trying to watch the screen at the same time. I don't see any other hands going up. Bill, it looks like their questions will be offline, and see if we can't get you back here in a month to demonstrate the engineering that came up with that recommended route. But I do want to just take a moment to say thank you to you and your team at DOT and our legislative partners around the South Sound, recognizing this as a regional issue and working on the next legs of after 510 completion. When you mentioned the roundabout at Vale Road, we certainly need that for the safety reason that we've had some loss of life there. And also, when you get that big roundabout at 507 and 702, we're going to see a considerable reduction in congestion. And I do appreciate DOT's work in Pierce County with the public hearing that you have on the roundabout going in at 8th and 702. That's going to be helpful to a lot of our people who use that road as well. So thanks for your continued work on this, and we hope to see you back in October. Any other questions, comments from council? Okay.
All right, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Bill.
Yep. Bye.
Okay, and now the one, the only, Michael Graham, to talk to us about services contract.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. This is the presentation on legal services. This is what we planned to give at your last study session, but we hit pause to make sure that everyone could be here so we could get feedback from you all on the course direction that we're on. I'm going to go provide some brief background information. I'll hit the highlights of the key aspects of the path forward, which is the moving towards a contract, or 2 contracts in this case. And then we'll talk about time frame and next steps. The screen share function is going up right now. Let's see. Can folks see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So as Councilmember Curry loves people who are presenting to do, EJ, as much as I love reading these to you verbatim, I'm just going to hit the high points. As you know, we put the Yelm Municipal Code in there for reference, that the position of the appointment for the mayor is a responsibility of the mayor, but there's that checks and balances of the council establishing compensation with the budget. As you know, through different firms, including his own now, Brent Dilley has been a longtime provider of our legal services. The prosecutorial services has varied between individuals, but currently Brent provides our legal services to the city as well as the prosecutor services for the city as well. One of the things when you were going through and reviewing budget amendments was said, hey, we want to pivot from having a letter of agreement to a contract that council would actually approve. And one of the things that spurred this conversation was a request from the attorney to bring into parity the legal services that we have. As you remember, we just added public defenders, and those public defenders came in at a high case rate. Brent was looking at those and he requested a rate adjustment, and council said, well, let's look at this from the macro perspective, and let's actually go ahead and do a request for proposals sometime to make sure that we're getting A, the best services, and B, that we're paying the attorneys fairly. So that was the guidance from council. The next steps for us would be to tee up a legal services contract. Originally, we looked at doing this as one because currently Brent provides both through Dilley Law. It was recommended and requested that we actually tee up two legal services contract, one for civil and one for prosecutor. So those have been drafted up. The goal would actually be to maintain the same level of legal services with the same provider at this point to maintain continuity. But then the next actions for council would be, and at the same rates, the next actions for council would be get the information back from the RFP and then use that information to adopt the next biennial budget. Currently, we're in the 21-22 biennial budget. You would do the RFP in the fall of 22, which would allow us to include those new rates, whatever they may be in 23 and 24, and then enter into contracts with whoever those entities may be for legal services. Maybe it's one provider as it is now for civil and prosecutorial services. Maybe it's two, but we don't know. It's just taking a stepwise approach. One of the key things that we heard from council was rather than to have a rolling letter of agreement and a rolling contract, to actually have a hard start and end date to the contract with some flexibility for extenuating circumstances. And so based on the feedback from council, I want to put that specific language in there for you to look at. And really, I'm just going to pause here and see if there's any other things that you would specifically like to see in these contracts. We have them drafted up, and then as is typical, this is the presentation for your study session. We'll then include the contracts and the staff write-up for your next meeting, and then you can adopt it either when it's up there for new business, or you can move it to a second reading and adopt it when it's up there for old business, however council wants to take that approach. But I'll just want to pause there. Is there anything else specifically that you would like to see in these contracts as we move down this forward, or any questions, any concerns, any other points of emphasis that you'd like to see in the draft that we bring forward for whole council consideration? Councilmember Carmody?
There we go.
Yeah, thank you. I thank you for doing this. I think it's high time that we did this because, you know, Brent, as awesome as Brent isn't going to be around forever. And there's going to come a day when he decides that he wants to retire, and the new attorney that comes on board may not know anything about municipal law, but is great at prosecutorial stuff, or is great at municipal law, but doesn't know anything about prosecutorial. So I think it's a really good idea that we divide this up right now before we run into anything like an emergency. So thank you for dividing these into, I think it's really important. You're asking us if we want to see, if we want to change anything or add anything, but I haven't actually seen the proposed contracts. I asked for them to be emailed to me today, and I did not get those. And I was wondering if I could get those emailed to me.
Sure, we will send out the contracts to the entire council. Really, nothing has changed, Councilmember Carmody. I know you and I met privately on this, and you know, we went over those drafts, and I unplugged them from the initial proposal, which had them married as one and separated them into two. That's the only one. the rest of the council has not had the opportunity to even be part of this conversation aside from the inception. So that's where I just wanted to hit pause and see any other good ideas, any other things that you'd like to see, points of emphasis, which would then allow us to work with the attorney, put those in that draft, and then we'd send it out to the whole council. So these were the big things we heard so far: timing, term, and 2 separate contracts. And again, I'm
Okay.
looking at it from the
I-
60,000 perspective. Anything else that you guys are interested in?
Yes, can you please send us the contracts so that we can review them, so that if we want to add something to them, we can.
Yes, that will be
Thank
part of
you.
your next council meeting.
Thank you. Otherwise, I have nothing. I think this is great. It's high time. Like I said, Brent is an amazing person, but he's, not going to be around forever. So,
So here's the path forward. If there's any feedback or anything else from other council members beyond those things that we've heard so far, as I just said, we will have the city attorney review the contract. It will go in your packet for the September 14th meeting, and that will be on new business, of which then, per your process, you could then pivot it to the old business on the 28th, or you could take action on it on the 14th, whatever you desire. So that's the path forward and the timing there. The next steps for the RFP is before you will do that in fall of 2022. And again, that's to create continuity between the budget that you will adopt for the next biennium for 23-24. Any other questions?
Right, very good. Then we will move on in our study session agenda. The mayor's report is very simple this week as we continue to work with Commerce to understand what we can do with the ARP funds, and we will bring that to council as soon as we have a clear path forward for that. Stephanie Dice and Michael Graham are working with a number of people on this so that we have a good plan for that. And we've had some new hires. You'll get to meet them as business meetings come along. The latest one started just today. Erica Cecil came to us from the Thurston Public Utility District and is able to hit the ground running in utility billing, as she's done this for quite a long time in different places. So she walked in, sat down, and started doing stuff as if she'd always been here. It's wonderful to see the team growing. When we have people who take advantage of other opportunities and we have vacancies, it's nice to get the right people. And kudos to our human resources team, particularly Karen Bennett and Lori Lucas, who were able to
of authors and presenters.
Thank you, Michael, for doing such a good work on getting these people interested in coming to Yelm. And I think it's going to be a happy fix for everybody. We'll go on next to council member initiatives, but before I close, I do want to remind everybody, because of the regulations put in place in Washington State for meetings, and because of the allowances made by the state for us to have remote meetings, it is imperative for the council members to be seen by and be able to see all other council members during the meetings. Now, this being a study session, I didn't bring it up at the beginning, but for our business meetings, it would be very appropriate if council members would be on camera and stay on camera for the entirety of the meeting. We'd appreciate your cooperation in that. With that said, I'll go on to council member initiatives. Remember, this is not reporting back at business meeting. This is something new that you would like to bring forward for council to consider. Council member Blair?
Not something to really bring forward to council, but I did see today that the splash pad is now closed, but it's going to be open if it's above 80. I just was hoping that we would reconsider that, keep it open on the weekend as long as it's sunny and probably over 70. I mean, it's going to be like 75 this weekend. It may not hit that 80 mark, but I guarantee there's going to be kids out there Saturday and Sunday wanting to use it.
Cody, do you want to address that since you're here?
Yeah, I can address that, Mayor. So the plan was to end the splash pad on Labor Day as our seasonals ended. So we have no employees working the weekends now. If council wants us to run the SPAD on the weekends, we would just have to have overtime for some employees to monitor and do testing on it.
Councilmember DePino?
Thank you, Mayor. Cody, in the future, would it be possible to, I don't know the fiscal impact, but to extend those seasonal employees for like another 2 weeks?
We would have to start them later in the season if we wanted. So the other thing is when we brought this up at the beginning, we had mentioned that Labor Day would be the final day the splash pad was running, and that was kind of the set date that we picked. In the past, or at least the last year it ran throughout September, but it was only run on weekends in the month of September. So
What was
So
the
to answer
decision? What was the
Wait, go
decision to go to this model where we stopped on Labor Day weekend?
when I brought it to council as a proposal, everyone agreed with the Labor Day shutdown because
Sure,
of
but what was
school
the,
starting.
but why did you rig it like that though, Cody?
Well, because we know that the temperature in September starts to dip and get cooler, and so that's why we had that option to keep it running for the hotter days. And we set 80 as just to have a temperature that we could, pick, because you can have days of 70 where it's still raining or cool, and you wouldn't run the splash pad. Obviously, we can do a case-by-case basis. If it's a nice weekend, we can turn it on. That's not an issue.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm with James on this one. I do think that, I mean, maybe 70 is a little bit cold, but yeah, it's still pretty warm out. And I do agree with the assessment that there's going to be a lot of children, families wanting to use that and utilize that water park this weekend, most likely.
And I totally get why after Labor Day, especially during the week. I mean, once all the kids are going back to school, there's no point to run it all day. I just like through September on the weekend. I mean, if it's sunny and nice out, I think we should turn it on. But I think you already had that in your head, Cody.
Yeah, that was our plan. We just picked 80 as the number. Obviously, if it's 79, we could turn it on. It's not it's end all be all.
All right, that all, James?
Yep, that's it.
All right, Councilmember Carmody?
Oh my God, I had something. Oh yeah, Prairie Days. So I was briefly on the Prairie Days committee. It was kind of a funky setup of meetings, but that ran into some of my other meetings. But of the ones that I was able to attend, I was kind of shocked to learn that we don't have a budget for Prairie Days. And we have a whole committee of people that are working to produce Prairie Days. And normally it was the Lions Club that was producing Prairie Days, but I think now they're not doing it so much. So it was up to committee members to find businesses that would sponsor different activities in Prairie Days. And I was thinking it would be really nice if we could have some kind of, even just a small budget for Prairie Days, $5,000, $10,000, just to help smooth things along so that we can budget for extra people from public services to take care of that, take care of the extra work around the community center and the city park. If we budget for it, then it'll be easier to pay for. I think that it's important that people have Prairie Days and people really enjoy it. And if we can budget money for it, even just a small amount, I think it'll make things go much more smoothly. That way they don't have to stress about finding sponsors for every tiny little activity that happens. So I'd like to put that forward to council and see what we can do about that.
Okay, you can certainly make that a budget proposal for the 2022. I'll just remind folks that the Prairie Days is not a city event. It's a community event that's made possible by the collaborative efforts of a great number of individuals and organizations and businesses who wanted to keep the spirit alive of Prairie Days. Once it was let go by the Lions Club in 2018, mostly for financial reasons, that community group stood up and created a very successful free fun family event in 2019, completely funded by local organizations and private sponsors of individual events. That's what was supposed to happen in 2020. Of course, it didn't. And then we recreated that ad hoc collaborative community committee to continue on with Prairie Days in 2021. It was very successful. The individual departments, including the police department and the public works department, already have in their budget an understanding that they're going to support these public events like Prairie Days, Christmas in the Park, Jazz in the Park, barbecue rally. They already understand that they're going to have some staffing issues, and they make room for that in their budget. But you could certainly add more if you wanted to say, sponsor some part of one of these public community events.
Right, so I'd like to thank the mayor for his opinion there and for his statement, but I'm suggesting that we add a Prairie Days line item for the budget.
And I would like to thank the council member for her offer. And as I said, you could certainly make that as a budget proposal for 2022, and you could vote to do that. So thank you very much for that suggestion. Councilmember DePinto?
Thank you, Mayor. Didn't you direct city staff to help with that planning though this year and use city time to work on that though? Not including the public works and police, of course.
Yeah, so as it happens, two of the most outstanding citizens in Yelm who wanted to work on that committee had a benevolent employer who gave them some time during their workday to work on that project, but a considerable amount of their time was done as volunteer members of the community. And they were joined by other citizens whose benevolent employers also allowed them time to work on that project, as we do with many other city projects.
Yeah, and that's great. And I think you did a great job by directing to do that. But to Councilmember Carmody's point, though, if we just budget that a little bit, those people can do it a little bit more, and we can have a better outcome as well for the cities on this. And so I full-heartedly support Councilmember Carmody's hopefully proposal coming up soon. So looking forward to
We'll
seeing
look
that.
forward to the proposal and its specificity on how those monies should be spent in support of these community events. Okay, anything else, Councilmember Carmody? Councilmember Curry?
I have nothing.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for coming in.
You bet, anytime.
Councilmember Smith?
I have nothing.
Councilmember Wood?
Yes. I have a question, some clarification I'm looking for, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned that in reference to our presence on video in these meetings, and you mentioned and you referred to this meeting as a business meeting, and I'm a little confused because I'm sure this is a study session, because a business meeting would indicate that we're conducting business, and of course every one of us here knows we don't do that at study sessions. So I'm curious if that wording actually applies to the study session, simply because, as memory serves, we used to not record our study sessions. We used to sit in a room amongst ourselves and really have an opportunity to get, to debate things and get to the roots of it and work things out, which in my humble opinion is a mistake that we don't do it that way now. However, my curiosity is as I said, a little clarification on the business meeting as opposed to a study session, and if that rule actually applies to a study session.
Well, thank you for the question. Which, trying to keep the study sessions more relaxed. I wasn't going to make a big deal about it, but technically you're correct. Because we advertise this as a meeting, because we have a majority of the council present in a public meeting, public is invited. This meeting of the council should follow the guidelines that were set down by the state, and we should be on camera, visible to each other, or in session or in the council chambers physically, so that once again all council members can see each other and hear and be heard by others.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Anything else, Tracy?
Well, I could go on for days, but I think I'm going to go ahead and save everyone the hassle of listening to me ramble on, and I appreciate the time.
Thanks. Councilmember Kaminsky.
I think you forgot somebody. I'll just remind you.
It must be Freudian. Councilmember DePinto,
I don't have any new initiatives.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
Oh, I have no real initiatives, but I am looking forward to this bypass. It wasn't until I started working with some of the city businesses on the main road. I mean, I always knew traffic was bad, but holy moly, when you're standing on the street trying to talk to someone, the smell of the trucks and the noise is incredible. Here we're trying to put nice park benches on the road. And it's like, who cares? Who wants to sit there? It's terrible. So I'm looking forward to that project. And I have no other initiative. And I really think everybody should turn their camera on unless you have to go to the bathroom or something.
Terry, I want to throw a little bit more history at you because what you said just now, at that first public meeting that I went to in 1996, when they were discussing the various options for the bypass, there were bypass 1, 2, and 3. The businesses turned out, the Yelm businesses turned out and said, no bypass, it's going to kill our business. We want all of those cars coming right past our business. And then, you know, you flash forward 25 years and it's, oh my gosh, please build the bypass. This traffic is killing our business. So times change, priorities change, and they will again as we move forward. And then we'll all be in electric cars and look like George Jetson. So different problems then. Okay, with that wraps up. Any other good of the orders? Anything that from Mr. Graham that we forgot to fill council in on?
Go Hawks.
Nothing, Mayor.
All right, then this meeting is adjourned. I want to thank staff and the attendees who came in and watched by Zoom and by, we'll see you all later on.